Moss2 opens a brand new daytime surgery. Vets to the Rescue starts today at 12:30 on BBC One.
And the weekday mornings start here on BBC One.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hello and good morning. When a child is being raised in the care of social services, you expect them to be cared for properly, don't you? Of course you do. You expect them to get the attention, the supervision, even perhaps a bit of the affection that they need to keep them out of trouble. And yet, what's happened? We all read stories about things like the shocking death of the 13-year-old Alia Ismail, a drug-addicted prostitute who died of an overdose whilst in the care of Harrow Social Services. Vulnerable children are really being let down very badly by the care system, aren't they? What happened to you when you were in care, Tanika?
Well, I've had a really hard time in the local authorities. I haven't had the attention, the love that I've wanted. I've been pushed around from pillar to post, different homes, people saying they care but they don't. I've ended up in trouble with the law. Basically, I haven't had the life that I was expecting to have.
What age were you first put into care?
I first got taken into care properly when I was 6.
And did you stay in care all the time, or did you?
I stayed in care I've been in care for the rest of my life, ever since.
How many different homes have you been in?
That I can remember of in the last about 5 or 6 years, I've been in 22 different foster homes.
22? Why?
Because I wasn't getting the attention that I wanted. I felt unsettled. I didn't like being here. Wasn't at home with my parents. And so I just basically, I wasn't getting the attention that I wanted. I was unsettled and I just couldn't stay there. Foster carers didn't like me for the way I was.
You were supposed to be in the care of the local authority, being cared for. Were you being cared for?
No.
Did anybody care about you?
No.
What, not in all that time, nobody cared about you?
I've been in 2 homes foster homes that I can say that I like staying at. But all the others, I was just work. Basically, they were doing their job, and doing their job was looking after me.
And you say the lack of attention, the lack of care that you received led you to get into trouble?
Yeah.
What kind of trouble?
I ended up in trouble with the police, going to court, Crown Court.
Can you tell me why? What for?
What for? Assaults, offensive weapons.
Do you blame this for being in care, on being in care?
I do.
Why?
Why? Because if people had listened to me, then I wouldn't have ended up in trouble. Because I had nobody to listen to me, I turned on mixing around with the wrong crowds because I thought that they cared because they were listening to me. And I just started moving with the wrong people, staying out late at nights, basically.
Well, that sounded similar to me, but with me, I look back now and I don't blame my foster parents. I don't blame the care system, or that much at least. I look back and say it's my fault because I pushed my foster parents, the children's home, to see how far I can get away with. When it didn't go my way, I got myself into trouble. I phoned police, got them into trouble, or tried to get them into trouble, should I say.
The reason why I blame the local authority...
Sorry, go on. You were actually getting yourself moved by causing complaints and causing trouble.
Yeah.
So you were the trouble. So in a sense, you're saying she's moving from pillar to post. You got yourself moved from pillar to post, and you caused the problem to do it.
Yeah, but people have to look at it as well. Okay, I blame them so much, but then I have to look at me and say I shouldn't have got myself into trouble with the law.
I don't agree with that.
Hang on, Mary.
The reason why I blame the local authorities is because I actually opened my mouth and told them that I needed help. I needed somebody to talk to, somebody to listen to me, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, I asked to be moved along a few times.
Hang on, please. Go on.
And it's just a case of, I've now looked back, seriously looked at my life and says, well, I know those problems were my fault. I can't blame the situation around me. I can for so much, but not for all of it.
No, I don't agree with that. I mean, from my experience, I was placed into care at a very, very young age. And you can't, at the age of 4 or 5, I can't believe that you can think, no, it's my fault, I'm into care. You do think like that, but then you think you're a lonely child. It's not your fault that you're placed into care. You will try your hardest at some stage, at the beginning, to be a good person, to talk to these people, so that they will listen to you.
I was put into care at 6 years old, and that's when I started causing the trouble. It's not until later on in life I now look back and say, OK, that caused so much, that caused so much. Wait a second, surely I have to take some responsibility on what I did.
How can you take responsibility at the age of 6 years old? You've got people there that are meant to be looking after you.
I agree.
It's them that are telling you what to do.
When I was very young, I did blame the situation, and OK, I still do in some cases. But looking back, as I got older, 13, 14-year-old, do I still blame my situation, or do I blame me?
No, I don't blame myself at all.
No. But he's saying he's taken care of his life now. He's got. He's not going to let the past dominate him.
Yeah, I'm taking care. So did I. I mean, I could.
Well,
you
that's
can,
what
you
I
can
say.
go two ways.
14-year-old must know right and wrong, must be able to take responsibilities for his own actions. Then how can I blame everyone else? At that age, I take responsibility. It's my fault.
What do you blame the care system for?
I blame it because they don't listen properly.
Don't you listen, Stuart?
Yeah, we try to listen as much as we can, and I've been in the system.
Hang on, that's a strange way to put it. We try to listen as much as we can.
That's right. Well, for the last 5 years, I've been in the system, in the care system, as a residential social worker, and I see that people are trying to increase their efforts to do the job well, and part of that is listening to what young people say.
When you've just said, I try to listen as much as I can. You listen to a social worker is delegated to a lot of children. There's not enough social workers around. You've got a group of children, you've got one person. How can you, at the end of the day, say that you've managed to sit down and listen properly and give that child a cuddle if it needs it, when you've got so much on your plate? There needs to be more social workers, there needs to be more counsellors, there needs to be more emotional support for those children. Because at the end of the day, that child is going to sit there in front of you, chat away to you, you're going to get up and then go on to the next child.
I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Well, that don't sound very good then, does it?
There needs to be more...
Stuart, if you're saying that, you're agreeing it's all wrong.
No, I'm agreeing with what she's just said, that young people need to be listened to.
And
that's the point that she made then.
Go on, consistency as
Cynthia.
well, though. I mean, you go into a home and most homes, majority work in shifts. So you can you'll have a key worker. And then with that key, but if that key worker isn't on shift, who do you talk to? You've got to go and talk to that member of staff that may not know what you're talking about because you've only spoken to your key worker about that. Or, as with some authorities, they have agency workers. I mean, how can you justify agency workers to take care of children, and not just normal children? I mean, children in care have problems. It may not be their own problems, it may be family problems, but they're the ones carrying the baggage.
Did they listen to you?
To a certain extent. I felt like I had no control over my life. And I don't see, I mean, of a 13, 14-year-old, you need to feel some sort of control. You need to feel like, OK, you may not make the decisions, but you at least have a say. Yes, definitely.
That's exactly what you want.
And social workers didn't make you feel wanted?
Not at all. Social workers, in my experience, and that's what it's about for me, and that's why I'm here. What I was taken into care at 4. I was then put with foster parents. These foster parents had me for 10 years, foster parents, and I went through all sorts of stuff, which is another story. But when I actually stood up for myself at the age of, I think I was 14, and they actually put me back into a home, the social worker that I had, every time I said something for me, they went, oh, don't worry, it'll be all right.
They don't believe you know what you want.
They don't believe a word of whatever you say to them. But it wasn't until a threat was made by me at 14 that I actually got put back into a home, I totally ignored. My sister was still with the foster parents, but then they were left. That was it. There was no more connection. I was severed from connection with my sister. I was put into 3 different homes. I saw my social worker once a year, and at 16, Out you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Back into the big white world.
16. Stuart?
Sorry. Yeah, hopefully, wherever you were in care, obviously it wasn't the case in your case, but you should be aware and be educated by your carers that if you're not happy with the treatment that you're getting, that there are avenues to go down. And this should be made...
In my experience, there wasn't none of this. This is all new age stuff as far as I'm concerned. We were just put there, we were sent to school, we were then put here, we were sent to bed, we were told what to do, everything. There was no individualism. And the word care, there's no such thing.
It's an institution. It's an institution. You're plunked in a home, you don't have no family, no friends, you don't feel loved, you feel rejected. It is the worst situation that you could ever put a kid into.
Thank you.
And no one listens to you. If you're behaving badly, oh, it's just a child. You're labelled. Once you're in care, you're labelled. You go to school. Oh, don't talk to her, she's in care.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And
You're saying a social worker doesn't listen to you?
no, they don't. No. They don't. I know someone, my friend, she was abused sexually. And basically what happened with my friend, social services gave her a male social worker. Doesn't tally. How can you give a male social worker to someone who has been sexually abused by a man?
Anthony?
You can't do that. You can't do that.
In an ideal world, you would have had a choice, and I'm sorry if you didn't have one, but...
No, it wasn't me.
Your friend, but we suffer from...
There was never a choice. In social services, this day and age, may be different, but from when I was in it, you were there.
It's
that
patchy
was it.
today.
And when you were sick, and when you were 16,
today.
Patchy today.
Yeah,
40
thrown
years
into
ago,
the big world.
40 years ago.
Why is it patchy?
40 years ago, children in care...
Hang on. I like this word patchy. I don't like this word patchy. What do you mean? How can you sit there as a director of social services and say, well, it's patchy day? How can you turn around to her and say, sorry about her friend who's been sexually abused by a man, be given a male social worker, that's unfortunate, it shouldn't have happened, it's a bad choice, or you didn't have the... That is awful. It should not have happened.
I'm not... social services...
I'm not pretending...
Right, no. That's the thing, the social services never look at the facts, mate. Right? You never do. You just go in, do what you want, and that's it. You never look at the facts. If you'd read through a file, you see what's going on. You know, I've got that. You know what I mean?
There's no defence against any of your individual stories, but there is a general explanation. 40 years ago, a lot of children in care were forced to emigrate to Australia, the other half of the world. The services now are generally a hell of a lot better than they were. But at one point, you've got to bear in mind...
They're not at all.
This is last week. This is last week.
Serious, mate, yeah?
I knew somebody would say, it's not like that anymore. Last week.
We have half the social workers we should, and the foster carers... recruitment for foster care is something that's going down fast. These are now the highest profile public sector jobs, but the job is becoming too difficult for many people to go into. Some of our teams only have male workers. Ideally, we'd offer your friend a female worker. If we didn't, it's probably because there wasn't one to offer.
I had to run away from my foster carers, right, from carers, and that is a loose term. I had 10 years of it. I should have been adopted by this family. But I was left there for 10 years, being allowed to be fostered, and you know the difference. Fosters you get paid for.
Would your life have changed if you were adopted?
But my life, in the last 2 years, my life has got back on track from what it was. I've done myself, I work, I do everything, I don't get anything from this. I never ask anybody for anything. Yeah. But the word of trust, the word of care and the word of love are very, very strange to me.
I'm not
the people who should be, you give someone like me a chance to look after kids. I've been there, I've done everything. When I asked them, when I was 18, when I asked them, they said to me, there's no way you'd get a job in the social services. Why? You've got too much experience. That's what they said.
You says, like, about the kids, how their behaviour, how it is. Yeah, why are they behaving like that? They're behaving like that because they want help. They're crying out for help.
Sure. Sometimes things happen before they came into care. Sometimes the care system makes them worse. But I'm saying...
there's nothing there. There's no safety net there. And there's no one there to say, OK, you're behaving like this. Why are you behaving like that? It doesn't happen. They're just segregated. Oh, for me, for instance, when I was in care, they said I was uncontrollable. They couldn't foster me. All I was doing was crying out for help. Yeah. Someone help me. Yeah, and it took me 16 overdoses down the line, to get help.
I was put into care through no fault of my own. I ran away from the foster unit I was placed in, yet for that I got put in a secure unit.
Yeah.
For doing nothing
and in
other than
Alia's
running
case,
around.
which was a tragic case, she wasn't and she died. And
She was a caseload.
The decision
you never seem to get it right, though, do you?
Well, we
if you
get
go
it right.
through the whole catalogue of cases, I mean, it is appalling when you go through, when you think of all the, I mean, and we've virtually had our own public kind of inquest on all these cases too. I could almost cite a whole catalogue of famous cases like that.
Of course you can. Every 10 cases that go wrong.
And that's a part, no, but they're not just a case that's gone wrong. These are major mistakes, where there's a whole colossal mess up with a whole series of people, not just one. It's people not doing their job properly,
Robert,
not having the. And it's not just that. It's not just that, Anthony. If I can just, it is also, isn't it? But you look at the number. I mean, I got it for this programme, and I looked at the local authority areas, social service areas, which have child abuse cases going on. It's North Wales or Staffordshire, or had Staffordshire, Merseyside, Cardiff. It's extraordinary.
Mostly in the 70s and 80s, far less now. But the account. I'm accepting the accountability for things that go wrong. But these are failures of the public service generally. They're government failures, local authority failures. If you want, I accept that. If you want things to be better for the future, certain things have to happen. Otherwise, the same things will go wrong again. And hopefully, during the programme, of course it's not. And people who've suffered to date, there's no defence against.
There's no defence.
Can I just say? Please, my love, I'll come to you in a moment. Hey, we try to be fair here, one at a time. I'll come round there. I've got plenty of time.
You would want for other young people in your situation for things to be better in the future.
Yeah.
And
we're talking about 50,000 today.
Just to give you 2 or 3 examples, we have to make fostering easier for people to do. It's not that easy, that's why people aren't coming forward. We have to increase the professional training period for social workers, as Audrey recommended. We have the shortest training period in the Western world, that's the Select Committee. And in London, we're £25 million overspent on children's services. We have real...
Hang on, please, one at a time.
Money, unfortunately, is the key to providing better public services.
Can I just say something? No. I was put in care when I was 16 months old, okay? And I stayed with that family until I was 4. Then for no reason, I went back to an alcoholic mother. Yet I don't still know to this day why I was taken back to my mother.
Do you never explain to you?
No, and I've asked for my social services files, they won't give them. Time went on, and I was put in home after home after home, pushed from pillar to post. 2 overdoses down the line, the psychiatrist diagnosed me with attention deficit disorder.
Pillar to post, a lot of that. I mean, the one thing we know about kids, don't we? When we're talking about kids here, and we had this notion, this concept of doing things that are in the best interests of kids. And one thing we know that kids need, of course, they need the love and affection and all that. They need stability, don't they? We need that. I need that.
Of course we do.
But that's the one thing you want. Then why? You do the then why.
Right? Same as that. Why? If they need stability, why send them to other places? Oh, she's pissed. I mean, she's mucked about this foster carer. We'll move on to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. She gets into different crowds, different people she knows, and she gets into more trouble, deeper and deeper, until she ends up in, say, that lady in the security unit.
Nearly every 4-year-old I know who's moved is moved because the foster carer can't cope.
A 4-year-old?
For whatever reason.
Can I just ask?
Not because of the behaviour of the child. Not because of your behaviour.
Is it the child's fault at 4 years old?
Of course it's not. How can it be at 4? It was a bad decision.
Yeah, can I just ask, why is it though? I mean, through my experience, you're placed somewhere and then all of a sudden the mother decides she wants to have another go with her child. But you already know that the mother can't cope with that child because that's why the child is in care in the first place. And they do still do it, why is it that you give that child back to the mother, for the mother then, 2 weeks later down the line, to shove them back into care again? And then again, she gets taken back to the parent. You're still doing it. You know that the mother and child can't cope. So why? Why do you keep trying to give the parents a chance?
I appreciate it. A lot of the decisions are made because the courts insist on it. it's not because social workers are politically
This is for
correct.
the child's best interest.
What should be done is something called concurrent planning, so that at the same time as a child is placed back in that sort of situation, there's also a permanent family identified where if it breaks down, you can quickly be moved. In the past, this often didn't happen. Kids have been backwards and forwards like yo-yos. That's not acceptable. I'm not defending it.
We're talking about people who've been in care and who've had their lives messed up, they think. And Anthony here, Director of Social Services, has been having a bit of a hard time, as you can see. I think he's going to carry on having a hard time because there's still a lot of people who want to talk to him. You know, he understands that. That's why he's here. Because a lot of people here this morning have been in care, in the care of a local authority, which is supposed to put their interests first, and yet they feel that their interests were the last ones to be considered, and that in fact what happened to them didn't improve or help their life. If it didn't wreck it, it had very serious consequences for them. Do you want to still talk to Anthony about what social services do or doesn't do for people in care?
Yeah. You put me in care, the authorities, through no fault of mine, no fault of my parents. You put me in and you labelled me as an abused child. Now, you can't specifically talk about this because this is not your case. You were not there. And at the end of the day, the local authorities never apologised for accusing my father of abusing me sexually. You took me away from my home. You put me in care for 3 years. 3 years, my parents fought for me, tooth and nail. And they got me back because it was a genetic defect. It was proven. You never apologised. Not once, not to my family, not to me. Whilst I was in local authority care, I wasn't looked after. I come back home. I was so emotionally wrecked. My mum didn't know what to do with me. She don't know what she's doing. She's messed up her life. I've messed up mine. My children are now in care. You turn around and, I'm sorry, Midday, you turn around and saying about how you should take the children away. I'm sorry, you can't just do that.
Anthony, do you want to...
You messed up my life.
There's an example of the emotion and the eloquence and the passion that we displayed there. It's people's lives we're dealing with here.
Sure.
Young, fragile, vulnerable lives.
Social workers don't make these decisions either maliciously or they don't make them on their own. They're backed up by a system. For every story like yours, there's another girl we've left at home to go on being abused and made the wrong decision there. These are very hard decisions to get right. Well,
that's what we want. We want apologies.
Yeah. And
you're still not apologising now.
Well,
you're still not apologising to the girl.
I can apologise on behalf of the care system, if you like, quite readily. But as you say, I don't know your case. That doesn't mean anything. In terms of the people you want to make an apology, then I think that, from what you've said, that will help you, and that's what we should do.
You've wrecked my life.
Claire?
You have destroyed it.
I don't buy that. I think your life is... Most people's lives recover, and you've got a long way to go.
Do you think it's because you cannot be put to wrong?
You can never be wrong? Don't write your own strengths off. You've got a long way to go.
Claire, hang on, please, Claire. Claire has been trying for the last 10 minutes to have a quiet word with Anthony.
I was put in care when I was 3, 1979, 15th of October. I was put into a home where there was abled and disabled people. I was then, had brief periods at home, but then put back again through domestic violence and finance and basically housing. And then from 3 till 17, I was moved 8 times. Now, I don't see any of that my fault. I never went out of my way to cause any problems to be moved. I was with foster carers for 6 years. And it took me to say to my social worker that I want to go home. I want to be with my parents. And my mum, I was a ward of court, my mum was fighting to have me home, but it took me to say that I wanted to go home. Unfortunately, it broke down. My whole life was unstable, all of it. I never felt that I had enough attention, but I didn't go out of my way to get it. And at 3 years old, I mean, that isn't my fault, being moved.
No, we've let you down.
Yeah, but I don't get no apologies.
How about sorry?
but you're saying that it's just... You always talk about the children in care as cases. They're not cases, they're people. You've got to start realising that. And it's not just the people we put in care, it's their families as well. I'm most probably the youngest person in this room. I'm 14 and my sister left home at 11. The social workers talked to everyone else in my family but me. I was 11 years old, left without my sister. She'd been with me all my life, she was like my second mum. And I was left without her. How do you think that made me feel as a child? I didn't understand why she was gone. How was I supposed to understand that? My sister got herself in a hostel with my nan. Now she's had a baby and she takes care of that baby so well because she knows how it feels.
How old is your sister?
My sister's 17.
She's still in. She's not in care now.
She's not in care. She lives
Did she have the baby when she was
Yes. No, she's not. She lives in a hostel, right, run by an organisation called Changes.
Same hostel.
That's the same hostel as Tanika's in.
Yeah.
But my sister was let down by it, and I was left.
What could you... Anthony's a nice man, in spite of the fact that he's getting hammered here today. But he wants to learn. He wants to know what to do. And from your experience of what happened to you and your sister, what is it you would tell him you want him to go away from here this morning knowing about, or to do something about?
You've got to realise that it's not just... They are people, right? But it's not just them. Think of the brothers and sisters and the families at home left without their
It's big. Of course, I can't leave you out of all this, Audrey. Where's the government in all this? Does the government actually do enough, do you think? Because Anthony talked about resources.
Yeah, in the past, no, definitely not. And last year, I'm on a committee which did an inquiry, and I know that what you're saying is absolutely right. We came to exactly the same conclusion. None of us had been in care, but we talked to people like you, and we talked to social workers, and we went through a long process. Took us a year. Then we produced a report, and one of the things we said was that these are children. They're people. I agree so much.
Oh, Audrey, it didn't take you a year to find out they were children. We know they're children. We know they're in care, Audrey.
Of course, but I'll tell you what, it did take us a year to find out. It took us a year.
You could have spent 20 minutes here. I bet you didn't find out more than you've learnt this morning.
Oh, yes, we did.
Okay.
We did. We found out what we've heard, and we found out the statistical backer, because, you see, it's easy to say these are just hard cases, but, in fact, you're not just hard cases, because half of the children in care, at least, come out with no decent education.
Excuse me.
All of that.
Children.
I know.
We're not statistics.
No.
We are people.
Look.
We may not have education.
Yeah.
My sister's got no education, but it doesn't mean I haven't.
No, hang on. I'm on your side.
Can I say
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you just...
Listen to them first, Audrey. Hang on.
Can I say something to you there? Now, you keep saying that the kids, you just said the kids come out of care with no education. I've come out of school. People were saying to me I wouldn't have no GCSEs. I managed to leave school with 5 GCSEs. I've worked to put myself somewhere. And also, I don't like the way that you say that the people that are on your committee have not been through what we've been through. Don't you think that it would be better? Don't you think it would be better that social workers would be better if they went through what we went through?
Parliament than ever before.
They haven't been in care.
But I'm not. No, I'm not a social worker.
I know, but I'm just saying it's better if they're coming from our background, because they understand us more. They understand what we want, what we need, what we have to make us be normal.
So we listened to you and we put things in our report to say to the government.
Can I just say,
it's always on paper, always on paper. What happened to doing it?
Can I just say that in my experience, I went through some really severe children's homes, and by the time I got to 16, and by the way, I'd just like to point out, with the children, I'm still looking for my sister who was taken away from me when I was 4, still looking. I'm not allowed to find her because I'm a sibling. She's allowed to find me, but it's hard for her to find me. With that point out of the way, by the time I was 16, I actually found a unit that was loving, caring. We had a one-to-one service. You closed it down. The government closed it down. They didn't have enough funding. You keep up these huge, large buildings where the children are mulling around. The staff haven't got a clue whether they're in, they're out, what they're spending their money on, whether they're drinking, whatever.
You've just said There wasn't funding, so a good place was closed down. But earlier on, when Anthony said we need more money, you said, what's money got to do with it? Well, that's one of the things...
They were talking about listening.
One of the things...
Social workers not listening.
Yeah, and social workers...
That has nothing to do with money.
Well, it has, because there's not enough of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not superhuman.
I knew you'd pick that up.
Thank you.
Look,
thank you.
You've got lottery, you've got all sorts.
Exactly. So...
Go on, what are you saying?
That's right.
Turn around, Audrey.
Listen a minute, love, yeah? Right?
Listen a minute, love.
Listen, how much do you reckon you get off fags off us, yeah? Right? How much is
billions,
that, yeah?
Billions.
And all other stuff, alcohol, lottery and all that, yeah? Where does it go? It goes in your pocket for your kids to have a nice little life in your nice big house. While we have to shit, while we have to trouble.
I represent a constituency with loads of poverty-stricken people, and in my lifetime I have been pretty hard up myself as well. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. So I'm on the side of those who are being pushed around.
Help us then.
Exactly, and that's what we're trying to do.
You're trying,
the government, all right, we said to the government, do this, this and this, and if you give me a chance, I'll tell you some of the things we asked for.
And they said, no, we'll build a cigarette factory instead.
No, they did not. No, they did not. They said, there's £375 million going for specifically children in care. There's another 500 odd millions going for under fours because nobody here has mentioned prevention. Nobody here has mentioned supporting families.
Hang on a minute. How much did that Millennium Dome cost you? How much did that cost you?
The Millennium Dome.
Well, whatever it is, that dome thing, yeah? Who wants that, yeah?
There are no...
More homes, more places...
money to go into it,
and people like him, or other people with life experience, to deal with us lot, instead of you lot going, we know, I've heard these people, but you ain't.
They read it from
books. You just ain't, that's what I mean. It's having an education, but a life...
This government...
Hey, we can all say things quiet. What you're saying is very important. But you can, and passion is important too, because it shows you exactly
it's
where
how
it's
I'm
coming.
feeling,
Of course it is.
Because she's sitting there saying, I haven't been with a silver spoon job, do you know what I mean?
I'm a northerner, don't you put me down with that accent.
Audrey is not a member of the government. This government has, and I'm not a member of the government.
That'll be the day when Audrey's a member of the government, I'll tell you.
This is the first government who have talked positively about teenage pregnancy, attention deficit disorder, some of the problems children face. Now, it's a 20-year programme. The government's got an ambition of eradicating child poverty. That is an amazing ambition. You could not have heard this within the last 2 years. But you're absolutely right, there are no votes in children's services.
Right.
And there's no politics in children. There's a huge noise.
Why not?
When children die and in programmes like this.
Because people like you haven't been to care, want other things, they don't vote for it. And he's quite right. It's not the most popular... that doesn't mean to say you're not right. We're talking to our Member of Parliament, who's representing New Labour.
I'm not representing New Labour, I'm representing Labour. Let's be quite clear about that.
Hang on, Lord. You know, I want to know. What do you mean? What do you mean? It's New Labour, your government.
My government is Labour, that's what it was elected. I'm a Labour MP. Let's just leave it at that. Don't let's go on a side issue, Robert. You know better than this.
Audrey, you know that's fascinating me.
What we're talking about's more important than labels, Robert. We're talking about these kids and their lives and others like them. And what we're trying to do...
Excuse me, I'm still labelled. I'm 18 and I'm still labelled.
Exactly, and one of the things we don't want is to stigmatise you.
But that's already been done, and it's still being done. You say you've got all this millions now. What's it going to go on? What's this supposed to go on? What? For the kids in care?
What's she going to do next? Build the Queen of Newcastle and forget about it?
It's going to be delegated on what? Youth clubs, possibly. You know, for young kids in care and things like that, and possibly a couple more social workers or foster parents. Get down to the nitty-gritty, get the social workers trained, get the foster parents trained, get the homes equipped.
There is nitty-gritty.
In politics, you have politics and you have your sidetrack, and you always go on the sidetrack every time.
Oh well, there's politicians and politicians. You're labelling as well, and it's not.
But the point is, can we not return what we've received?
I was going to say we've
been labelled. I went into care after severe amount of several amount of years of sexual abuse at the hands of my stepfather. But when I was put into care, it took them 5 years to offer me counselling. On my 16th birthday, we'll give you a couple of weeks. Her exact words: you can have a couple of weeks, but just before we kick you out.
And that's disgraceful. And you shouldn't be kicked out at 16. And our committee said, and the government has said that it'll spend money on making sure you're not kicked out.
Yeah, they say that. Do they do it? It's not happening. Yeah, they say that, but you don't do it, do you?
You've only had this government a couple of years. Be
You'll probably go back there today and say those are allowed to go and we forget about it again.
Departmental segregation.
What do you want? Audrey's a big mate of Tony Blair. What do you want us to go back?
Just to tell her we expect more.
What do you want?
Listen to us instead of listening to you.
Okay, now she's listening. What are you going to say to her?
What?
She's listening. She wants to listen.
To show more love and more money for us to have better lives like you.
Okay, what do you want?
So one of the things that our committee said was, youngsters have got no faith in their social workers, sometimes rightly and sometimes wrongly, but they've got no faith. I'm accepting you've got no faith. So what did we say instead? That every child and young person should have the right to have a mentor, a friend, outside the system, not employed by anybody, outside the system.
Okay, hang on,
and so we recommended, and the government's supposed to be going to do it.
Hang on a minute now, because I need somebody else.
I'll be trying to keep an eye on them to make sure they do.
That's a recommendation from the government. We recommend you support your advocacy groups, your peer-to-peer groups within your county, but it's not you have to do so. It's a recommendation. So if the council and my local authority turned around and said, well, we don't want to support it, and my organisation always would be down the toilet. Do you see what I mean? But the point is the recommendation. But where is your...
Do you get onto your MP about this?
Yeah, I've met my MP, and I've got to admit, he may be labouring all over for the other guy, but you know, I mean, he's brilliant. He's really good. And my local authority.
You better tell us what his name is.
Dr. Richard Edwards.
You say, right?
He's really good.
You say you give all these people all this money to look after us, yeah? Where I live, the county council look after us, yeah? They build youth clubs because I'm in Kid. I ain't allowed in that youth club because I cause trouble.
Well, that's disgraceful.
So why is that allowed?
That's disgraceful. Yeah, it's
that's
disgraceful.
us being discriminated against.
Yeah.
Any other kid can walk to that youth club door, look like a tramp, have a bottle of beer in his hand, and he can walk in at 11, innit?
Yeah. So there's some of us in Parliament